Hello and welcome back to the Recovered Republican podcast. Today I have Cindi Clayton with me, who's running out of Indiana's 49th district for a Indiana Senate seat, and help me welcome her to the stage. Hello, Cindi. How are you today?
I'm good, Brianna. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for joining me. Well, let's just start out with the basics. Tell everybody your full name as it will appear on the ballot and who can vote for you.
Okay. So my name is Cindi Clayton, and weirdly, it's Cindy with an I. Thanks, Mom. Uh, so that matters to my social media accounts. It's Cindi, Cindi, for Senate on all socials. I am in District 49, which includes Evansville and Vanderburgh County, which is the larger area around Evansville, and then Posey County, which is it borders Illinois and Kentucky. So we're all on the Ohio River, and we're right where those three states come together.
So you must know like Hunter Collins and all of them.
Yes.
Are you a part of the Rural Summit as well?
So I have joined the Rural Summit, and I attend what I can. So it's hard to divide my time. I've got three children, but my last one left in the house is 14, and he's in all the sports. So I'm on the road a lot with sports.
Yeah, I bet. Well, tell us a little bit about your day job. What do you do for work?
I teach at USI, University of Southern Indiana here in Evansville, which is actually where I went to school. I was born in Terre Haute and grew up in Clinton, and then went to high school in Duggar. And then I came to USI as a student in '95, and I just fell in love with Evansville and the community. And so I teach in the College of Business, but before that, I worked in HR for about 25 years, both at the university and in manufacturing. So that's a little bit of my background. I also worked, oddly enough, for a subcontractor to the Department of Energy at the nuclear plant in Paducah.
That is a mouthful.
It is, but that's relevant experience in terms of understanding when they're talking about, government waste and oversight and how taxpayer dollars are used. I've been in that audit risk management position for a couple of different government entities, and so I'm uniquely qualified in that way, where politicians have a lot of opinions about and ideas about laws, but they don't know how they actually play out once they've signed them. And that's one piece of experience that I have that's different than the most candidates.
Yeah. Well, is that kind of playing into what made you want to run?
My students, for sure. I call them my kids. I know I'm not really supposed to do that, but I do have kids that are older than them. So things like, I want to stay in Evansville, but I can't afford it because our utilities are amongst the highest in the state. They say, my students who are LGBTQ plus folks are unsafe. I got ordained to conduct a marriage ceremony between two of my students, and they kind of got me started in this, going to meet your legislator events, because I've never been into politics except for to vote, to research candidates and policies. And then the guy I'm running against said something really out of pocket to me, and I tried to find somebody to run against him because no one had run against him in the last two elections, and it turned out it had to be me. So that's how I wound up here. But now I'm in it, and I'm in it to win it. So,
well, I'm glad you're here. We need good candidates in every district, is my opinion, and you don't have to be a career politician or a lawyer to do so.
That's the thing, and it's set up in such a way that's hard for regular people to run for office, because there's a law that was passed last year in Indiana that says that if you are a state employee, that they're required by law to let you run for office, and they have to accommodate you when you accept office. So if you don't work for the state, and especially in this climate of violence and division, you can't out yourself politically, right? You can't say, I'm going to run for office being a nurse or a manufacturing worker, because you can't take 3 or 4 months a year off of work to go to Indianapolis. And so it either then has to be someone who's very wealthy, who's going to go, for their interests, or somebody who's retired, which is fine if they're still integrated in the community and in touch with what the young people, the middle-aged people are experiencing. And that's not happening in my particular case. Senator Toms is who I'm running against, Jim Toms. He's not in touch with what the average person is dealing with.
Okay. Well, that sounds like you're running for some good reasons. You want people who are representing us, who know what's going on in the community, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, and who have skin in the game. I mean, besides working at USI, I'm the board chair for a children's advocacy center here in Evansville called Holly's House. And I've served them for the last 11 years. And so we serve child victims of intimate crime and adult victims of domestic violence and intimate crime. And so I can't tell you how hard it rattles my cages to hear a certain demographic of people being accused of harming children when that's simply not aligned with the facts that I know very well. And if anyone wanted to see, they could go and look at the records. It's all public information about who is harming children. I think we all actually know, but it's not the people they say. And so that fired me up as well, because it distracts attention and funding from the real things that are harming children. And that actually is another reason I'm running, is because when the federal government last January said we're going to impound all funds to go do their work, tax dollars doing their work, that included research funds for faculty, friends, and colleagues of mine, and the work that we do to restore the health and try to get justice of child victims of intimate crime. And I mean, harm a child and see me really, really lose it. And so as you can imagine, the last few weeks have really been messing with my sanity. I can't stand by when children are being harmed.
I totally agree with you. I'm a speech language pathologist who works in First Steps. So
okay. All right.
I am 120 million % for everyone on the Epstein list being held accountable. I don't care what side of the aisle they're on. It does not matter to me. If you harm a child, then you deserve consequences. That's the end of the story for me.
Yes.
So you're not going to offend me with that, because it's
just
like
offend anyone. And the fact that it does, it's
insane.
We've gone into the upside down in a way that I, at 50 years old, never thought in my lifetime I would see.
You're 50 years old?
I will be 50 in November, yeah.
You do not look 50 at all.
Thank you. It's the lighting. I feel 150 some days, if I was telling my friend earlier that I definitely scrolled too close to the sun yesterday. And so by 8 or 9 o'clock last night, I was really not a good partner or friend to my husband. That's for sure.
Mm. Yeah, we all have our moments, I feel like, though. Mm-hmm. So it sounds like you're married. You have a son. Are there any other family members or pets?
Yeah. So I have my daughter is in her second semester of law school at IU.
Wow.
She did her undergraduate at IU, and so she's amazing. And then I have a grown son who his wife is also an SLP. They live in Austin, and he's a professional musician. And the story on that is I had him when I was a teenager, and I placed him for adoption. And so when he was 22, I always hoped and prayed he would find me. And so when he found me, my family was complete and my heart was restored. And so I am so blessed. We have a beautiful relationship, and I love him and his wife so, so much. And so those are my kids. I have two cats that might make an appearance. You never know. I did just feed them, hoping they'll leave us alone.
We'll
But yeah,
see.
that's pretty well the family.
That is a really cool story. I love that. And I think that's a good, I don't think people talk about that stuff very often because it's uncomfortable for people. And I think that it's probably resonates with more people than who talk about it. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah,
Um,
lots of people have been touched by adoption in some way. And one of the reasons why I talk about it, I mean, I have a happy ending. Nobody gets that. And so there's that, but then also to just the people who have these absolutist stances on reproductive issues. It's like, I made the choice. Don't tell me what I should or shouldn't do. Like, you don't understand. You can't understand until you have been there. And so I'm proud of the decision that I made, and it was the decision for me. And it's not my place to tell anybody else what is their decision. And so I'm proud of my son, and I'm very, 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 very blessed in that way.
so would you like to see more bodily autonomy for Indiana women?
Oh, yeah. Um, there was a child that was abused by her stepfather at 11, pregnant at 11, pregnant at 11. And so, why would my 77-year-old senator, who doesn't know this child exists, be the one to say what happens to that child's body now? And so, it is too personal and too complicated. And frankly, those men, when I was at the state senate, when I signed my papers, and I was in the gallery looking down at all of those elderly men making these decisions with no, I mean, I bet if you surveyed them, they wouldn't even know the female reproductive cycle. And so you
They
don't
don't.
know, and there are no regulations on men's bodies. It's very bizarre. And additionally, if we want women to have babies, if that's their goal, then we need to make it possible. You know, when Governor Braun a few weeks ago put out that, hey, you can bring your babies to work, I was like, come on, ladies, strap that baby on your back and get back to the plow, you know?
Come on, let's go to the opiate fields and pick with the baby. We'll just put some
Yeah,
opiates in their mouth to make them quit crying. It'll be fine.
tone deaf and out of touch.
It's
Absolutely.
It absolutely is. This is something that I talk about pretty openly because I think it's important for people to hear it. So, one of the big decisions when we decided not to have children was because it is unaffordable. It is so expensive in Indiana, especially in Indianapolis. It is more expensive than like in-state college
Yes, it
for
is.
childcare.
Yeah.
And that is simply not affordable when you are also stacked as a millennial with a ton of student debt. It's like I'm 37, I'm still paying it off. It's like my husband's an attorney who is a civil servant currently, and it's like you don't make a lot of money doing that being a good person.
Right.
So it's just it makes me infuriated, and it's laughable the things that they have put out to try to get people to have babies. Like, oh, we'll give you $5,000. And it's like the average is at least $7,000 that you have to pay out of pocket to give birth. So that is just an insult. It's like, here's a coupon.
Well, and it just again underlines how out of touch. And if you aligned with, there's so much global research on what makes successful families. You know, my opponent has on his signs family values. And I'm like, you have a bill out for the firing squad. SB 11 is co-authored by him.
I know.
And I'm just like, listen, well, how is that family values, honestly? instead of using your legislative power to enact what is a family value, it is making sure that families have uh, affordable, high quality childcare, that they can afford their utilities, that they can reasonably purchase a home, and the plot is completely lost.
I think the disconnect, it comes from like kind of like what we were talking about before with reproductive health. It's just like these old men were not probably even taught the reproductive system of a female. They are so old. So, and we all know these people are boomers, and some of them might even be silent generation still. And that we all know that a lot of that generation is typically out of touch.
Yeah.
And not all, but a lot of it. And they just weren't taught the things that we are now. Like they weren't taught that what an organs a woman has, and they didn't do research on women's bodies. And it's just this disconnect because they have so much money that they can't even fathom why it would be hard for someone to have a child because of money.
Yeah.
And that is the difference. And that is why these people are not making bills that make sense. If we keep electing people who are wealthy, who are literal millionaires, they are never going to make anything that makes Indiana better, because why would they? They have enough money that they're going to be fine no matter what. So that's why I don't think that we should be electing people like that, even if maybe they look good on paper. Money, it's like power. Money and power corrupt. It's like, what's that quote that power corrupts? Absolutely.
Absolute power corrupts absolutely. And just like your husband, being a civil servant, foregoing wealth for service, my choice. So my 20-year anniversary working full-time for the university is coming up in July. And, my husband's a professor too. He specializes in cybersecurity. And so we're both public servants. And so it's like you choose this life because you know that there are other kinds of wealth. And so so going to the State House and missing out on maybe some of my son's sports and things for a few months a year is a pain in the rear, but it's what I need to do right now to be part of what moves us forward. If we just sit and think, oh my God, everything's on fire right now, yeah, it's going to burn to the ground. And so the question then is, what are we left with, and who do we want to rebuild it?
Absolutely. I think that's a good way to put it. We're in a rebuilding phase at a minimum, I think. So what does that look like for you? What are your priorities if you do win?
Yeah. So some of the things that we've already talked about, the way that I look at taxes is that, it's almost like you go to dinner with a big group of friends and, everyone pitches in. Let's just say everyone throws their cash in the middle. And then, you pay for things based on, what you and your friends want. So the question is, we've all put our money in the pile. How should that money be spent? And I can tell you, it's not tax breaks for the rich. It's not tax breaks for data centers. And so I would say my priorities are public school funding. So in addition to the situation with my son, my mother died when I was 13. And I was kind of feral. And it was my public school teachers that saved me. And then back in 1995, you could still get financial aid and scholarships. And so the USI, the taxpayers took a chance on me. And so I'm giving back my whole life because of the investment that the taxpayers made in me. And then the ladder got pulled up. And so that ladder needs to be put back down. And so we need teachers to be paid properly and respected. We need our schools to be funded. They should not have to fundraise and crowdsource for basic things. We should agree as a state, as a society, that there's nothing more important than our children. They are going to be taking care of us when we're old. And so we have to pay into that in order for that to happen. Here specifically, we're under a utility monopoly called CenterPoint. And the fun little game, by the way, that the utilities are playing in Indiana is that Duke Energy gives campaign contributions to lawmakers down here, and CenterPoint then gives to Duke's customers, so that somebody who's not paying attention be like, oh, Duke Energy gave, that's not who we have, right? So anyway, we have the IURC. We finally have someone from our area on IURC, but all the fees that you see on your utility bill are approved by the legislature. So our utility companies have got to be reined in. $9 million salaries for their CEO is completely unacceptable on the backs of taxpayers. So bills to rein in that and to fund public schools. One of the things that last year's legislature did is they cut DCS funding, and they went from 18 regional offices to four.
And they were already short-staffed people.
Already.
Like my husband applied for a job out of law school for DCS, and when he went, he was like, it was so painfully obvious that they were behind. He's like, they're just set up for failure.
And so that's the Republican way, is to tell people that government agencies don't work, and so therefore you shouldn't fund them. Starve them to death and then go, see, I told you they don't work. When they do work, there are countries all over the world that are evidence that it works, but you can't starve them to death and expect them to work. So funding for that. And then overall, just going back to being professional. You know, Micah Beckwith came down here last year, and he showed up at Warwick County, which is one of the reddest counties in the state. And there was an arrest of a citizen because he was calling people names and being, he did it for a show because he loves a show on himself. And it's not just Beckwith, it's a lot of them that are like, I dare you. I am the all powerful. I am, in charge here. And so I dare you to cross me. And my perspective is, we are servants. We serve our constituents, and we have no right to needle them, to disrespect them, to speak to them like they're scum on his shoe. So those are the main three things: utilities, funding public education, and treating people right again. Getting with your constituents. I mean, we've got this technology. Why wouldn't I have a regular forum where citizens can get on and talk to me?
There's no reason that you shouldn't do that. And
Right.
There's absolutely no reason that representatives aren't doing that now. It would be extremely easy and inexpensive to do so.
It would be free. It would just cost time.
Yeah.
And that is absolutely something that I am going to do if I'm elected. During session, I'm going to have weekly town halls, virtual, and I'm going to tell people what I'm working on and say, hey, I want to know what's your feedback. And yes, my constituents are first, but everything that's done in the State House affects all Hoosiers. And so I would be open to hearing from a variety of Hoosiers.
Okay. So when you think about how you would vote in the Senate, would you say that the way you approach it is, does it benefit Hoosiers as a whole?
So we are a representative sample in District 49 because Posey County is all rural, and Vanderburgh County has a lot of rural areas still. And yet Evansville is the third largest city in the state. So I have a unique set of people. And so what's good for 49 should be good for Indiana, and vice versa, because of the distribution of people that we have. And so I think that would be the case. If I'm hearing different things, though, when I reach out, it would be something that I would take under advisement. And I have thought a lot about that particular question. And would there be a big divide? And I don't think there necessarily would be. Some rural counties might be more like, dogmatic about, we need to be forcing not mine, but their particular religion on people. And that's not something I'm completely unwilling to do. people have the right to their own religious beliefs, and that's everybody in their own home can believe what they want to believe, and the state should not be telling them what to believe and how to do that.
So I take it you are against the Ten Commandments being in the classroom?
Of course, when my daughter was in public school here in Evansville, they had a bus outside that once a week called Weekday Christian Education, and and it was during a flex time in the school, and a parent could sign up to allow their kid to go out to that. But now the governor has taken the pay cap off of school vouchers. So if you make $10 million a year playing for the Pacers, the taxpayers will pay for your kid to go to, Roncalli or something, or Park Tudor. And so that particular issue of school vouchers, okay, so if you're going to do that, why would you need to force religion into public schools? Because you're already allowing taxpayer dollars to go to Christian, Catholic, Lutheran, Baptist schools.
Yeah.
What's the point? Like, some of us want our kid to learn regular science, and we deserve a place for that to happen. And that's what the taxpayers should be funding.
Absolutely. So are you for abolishing the voucher program completely or putting the cap back on?
Cap back on, because, again, having an urban area. And I will tell you, one of the things I have to give credit where it's due, our Promise Zone in Evansville and the schools there are very well funded, as they should be. It's an under-resourced community, and the school is actually the community center. It's a very, very good model. And it really could be helpful in rural areas like where I went to school, where there's still a lot of poverty, but it's just not people aren't as densely concentrated in that area. So yes, I still think that vouchers are something that's doable, but I mean, the caps would be pretty low. And so my son, my youngest, went to a private school, and when I was married to his dad, he made enough money to where, we didn't qualify anyway. So I'm like, now that I'm running for office, I'm like, oh, I'm so grateful we never used vouchers. But anyway, long story long, yes, I would go back to caps.
So you said it would be pretty low. So does that mean it would be lower than it was before?
Yeah, I think it was like 450 or 500% of the poverty line. Yeah.
That sounds rather high.
It was high. It was quite high. And so I think that we would have to take another look at that. One of the issues that we're going to have is, we have absolute garbage data coming out of the federal government right now. So understanding what the poverty line is these days is going to be a challenge in and of itself when I get to Indy, working with bad data to begin with. But I would want to take a look at that, and also maybe look at voucher usage reports and see who is, what, not individuals, but in an aggregate of like what salary levels are using the vouchers.
I think that is the important information, because just talking to different people who are running, everybody has their different perspectives, because everyone's areas are very different. And when I was talking to somebody else, it was Natasha Baker, she was saying she doesn't like the voucher program at all, because she's like, for us, the closest private school is like 2 hours away. So it doesn't even benefit anyone in her district.
No, I know. And it's primarily it's a privilege for those who live in urban areas. In fact, in the Evansville Vanderburgh School Corporation is the second largest behind Indianapolis School Corporation. And we have all these choices within the public school. So we have a technical center where you can go and learn welding and diesel mechanics and to be a chef and all these things. We have all these luxuries that, I went to the school in Duggar. You go to the school, and there absolutely was no such thing as a private school anywhere around. And by the way, if we can kind of veer into homeschooling, as a person who is a involved in the child safety world, um, there have been instances of when a teacher reports a child, or that a child might be abused to DCS, the family can absolutely pull that child from school and homeschool them, and then the child falls off the map.
Oh
Yes.
my gosh.
So we,
That's
yeah,
appalling.
it is appalling. And so it's I'm all for family choices and small government, which is, as a recovered Republican, it's like y'all have lost the plot on the size of government, but to the degree we can let people do what they do, then, and there are some instances where homeschooling makes sense, but we have to have a way to be able to ensure the safety of those children, and that they can't just fall off the map. And I'm not sure how that would work and what's the right solution, but I do know it's a problem. And again, very few wheels have to be reinvented. If a person is intelligent enough to go and find data and to collaborate with others, then you can find answers that are time tested. And so that's something that I would want to do. I would really want to take a deep dive into education. But first and foremost is, since 2008 to today, I'm sure you know, our public schools have been defunded every year, and it's falling more and more on local. And when you have a rural local economy and people aren't doing well, especially with the tariffs on farmers, then the school just gets poorer and poorer. And that's not okay. And so I am thinking about rural families when I'm thinking about funding schools.
Yeah, when you said you're from Terre Haute, my family is from Terre Haute. Both
Hmm.
my parents were born in the Terre Haute area. My mom moved around a little bit because, her father was kind of like the main character in Big Fish, just couldn't stay in one place, kind of a thing. But they settled in Terre Haute, and that's where she went to high school.
Okay.
So I care about the rural communities because I used to also work in the rural communities, and I see that impact. And I see that a lot of families in rural communities, even though the cost of living is cheaper in a lot of these places, they're still struggling more than people are in the city. It's wild.
So the cost of living for the property is one thing, but the groceries still cost the same. Everything that has been tariffed now goes up, whether you live in Linton or whether you live in Indianapolis. And so your earning power in the rural area is lower, but you're still going to have to buy the same cost of goods, perhaps even more so, because again, the overhead of a Dollar General there. And if it's the only place in no competition, then they're obviously going to price it at what they want. And then at the same time, you have rural folks in droves voting against their own interests in that way, based on ideology. And that is so frustrating to me as someone who lived, Clinton. My dad was a coal miner, a union coal miner. So, I'm also, very pro-union, but my dad was a coal miner. Or if your dad worked at Eli Lilly, you were like, you had things like, I had a double wide now, not just a single wide. I grew up in a double wide. And then but the Eli Lilly people who made more, but then there were the farmers. And back then, the farmers didn't get subsidies like they do now. And so they were living in poverty. And so that, I know in rural areas, they're just, now that the mining has dried up, and they're just squeezed into nothing, and they're hopeless. And now you've got, the Republican Party out there trying to scare them within an inch of their lives and turn again, like calling names and, inciting violence and all these things, when it's like, no, we actually, like, Democrats actually want to help you. Like, we want our tax money. We want to pay taxes, and we want to help you.
Yeah.
Stop fighting us.
I think it's very interesting to look at history and Americans' history, especially when you look at like the Boston Tea Party. And the tax level at that point was so much lower than it is now. And people were outraged. And I just don't understand why people don't expect more from their taxes and don't know where their taxes are being spent. Like, I don't think we should be providing universal health care to Israel when we don't have guaranteed health care here.
Every country that our military, which is anywhere between 30 and 50% of our budget, has free healthcare and free university. So weirdly, the only thing I can say that I agree with at the federal level is, okay, maybe we should be backing off of being the world's police and take care of our own. Now, by their own, this administration means the billionaires, but we should be taking care of us. And as Hoosiers, to bring it back home, if somebody plays for the Colts and they pay in their on a $10 million a year contract, and they pay less of a tax rate than you do working at Dollar General, then that you should be mad as hell. Why aren't you mad?
I think
people need to pay their share.
I think also people need to understand what tax burden is, because that is the part that people really don't understand, and why flat tax is not fair. Because flat taxes, which means everybody pays the same percentage, that tax, like what if it's 10%, just a round number, 10% is going to be felt much harder with somebody who only makes $30,000 a year because they have to stretch every dollar, versus somebody who's making millions of dollars, because 10% to them is like nothing.
Yeah, there's a sort of cost of living line, and once you get past it, then you can cope with an emergency or something like that. But if you are, say, and it's not unusual for someone in Sullivan County, my home county, to be making that kind of money or less, and it's like you are one emergency away from homelessness, and at the same time, the media's got them out there going, criminalize homelessness. And I'm like, do you realize how close you are to homelessness yourself?
I don't I know they don't understand. And that's the thing. I was like, credit cards, if you are relying on credit cards for an emergency, you are one emergency away from being homeless, guaranteed. Because a credit card is essentially a loan shark giving you that money. And if you don't pay it off immediately, it's hard. And I would love to see in Indiana some regulations come out. Like, I don't know, I know Indiana can't do it because this is like federal level stuff, but I'd love to see some regulations on student loan interest, yes, particularly because there are so many predatory loans from places like Navient, for example, that you will borrow, and if you pay the minimum payment, you can never pay it off.
No, and another thing that, sometimes Democrats, I have to confess, are horrible about how they phrase things. Student loan forgiveness is not forgiveness of the balance. It is a restructuring of the interest, because the way that the interest is set to compound and the interest rate is forever. Like, it's a lifetime's worth of repayment. And so to say it is a loan restructuring agreement is entirely different. And that's what people want. Mm-hmm. You don't want to not pay for your school, but you want it to be a reasonable thing that could be done in one's lifetime.
I would love to have paid it off in 10 years, but it is impossible. And I don't make $30,000 a year. I make good money. And if I am struggling to do that when I don't have children, that's crazy. And right, people should be furious that we are not getting paid our fair share. And I think this is a great time to talk about minimum wage. What are your thoughts on a minimum wage? Because to me, minimum wage, if we do not raise it, is actually shooting ourselves in the foot, because that is the floor and everything else bases off of that. So I feel that keeping our minimum wage low is not curbing inflation at all, but instead just giving us less and less buying power because our wages are not keeping up.
Yeah. So one of the things that I want to say for context before I go into this is that the last time that minimum wage was increased in what, oh 07, 08.
It went into effect 08.
So I was working in HR at the university, and my university gets the lowest appropriations per person in the state. Okay, so we do more with less, and so we were sitting there in HR trying to figure out how we were going to roll this out with student workers, and how the university's budget was going to absorb this. So when I say what I'm going to say next about minimum wage, it's not from a place of ignorance of what it does to businesses, big and small. But my legislators, so we have a Meet Your Legislators event a couple of times when they're in session, all say, well, the market's taking care of it. The market's taking care of it. Yes, but the market is now people being laid off, and the market is now going down. Of course, people who watch certain news sites are not getting that information, but it is a fact. The USDA actually just put something out about buying power and groceries and inflation, and it's actually factual, believe it or not. Anyway, and so when the market corrects, and we have grown people with mortgages trying to live on 725, then we have a big problem. Also, this is an area where we cannot rely on free market economy. There has to be some rules of engagement, because if there's not, we see it that corporations will take advantage. So in Evansville, yes, every job pays at least $10 an hour, because we're in, there's a lot of competition for the talent. But you go over to New Harmony, Indiana, and the people who work in the gas station there and the Dollar General and whatever are making $7.25. And again, they still have to buy groceries at the same rate that we do. And it's a tourist town, so everything's probably marked up anyway. So it benefits the rural counties to have the minimum wage increase. And so I'm absolutely, it's way past time that minimum wages increase. And I will do everything I can to make that happen. Now, all these things I'm talking about, we have to break the supermajority first. Nothing's going to get done for us. I'm going through all the House bills and following them through, making phone calls to my senators and my House representatives. There's nothing in here about economics. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. And so until we get a critical mass of Democrats and independents in the state legislature, nothing is going to change. So yes, I would do it in a heartbeat, and I would absolutely propose minimum wage increase, again, in a step up fashion. We're not trying to turn industry on their head. I'm not one of those, head in the clouds people. I'm very grounded in experience and in life. But it has to be done. It's not even really, I don't understand why it's even a question. It's basic.
It's a question because as a recovered Republican, there's a lot of propaganda about that comes from the right that is about, if you raise minimum wage, it's going to raise inflation and all that. But what they don't tell you is inflation is going to happen whether you raise minimum wage or not.
We are living under a situation where tax cuts nakedly, they didn't even try to wrap it up in anything. They nakedly said, no, we're giving billionaires tax cuts so that, and you get less. Oh, except for a militarized occupation in your city streets. So it's not, the rhetoric has all been undressed for those who want to see it. And so, yes, inflation was up post-COVID because we printed a bunch of money. So that happens. That's kind of economics 101. And it was brought back down, and it had nothing to do with the minimum wage. It just means that billionaires will have maybe $100,000 less in their bonus check of, $1 billion. And I have trouble finding a place in my heart for sympathy for that.
I have
And
zero.
I really just think it's awful that average working people that I know with good hearts have been conditioned to defend that.
Yeah, I think that we need to find a way to reframe it. And some people are using, socialism for the top 1%, socialism for billionaires. There was another way that somebody put it, and I can't recall this right now, but changing the way we talk about it, because they are primed to understand language like that. And I think we need to start using that to our advantage to get through to people, is my thoughts on it. But I do want to ask you about cannabis in Indiana. Everywhere around us has cannabis legalized in some shape or form, except for Indiana. Do you think it's time for Indiana to legalize cannabis?
For sure. And I will say that as a person so we were downtown Indy for a convention the night that the Pacers played their last playoff game, and my 14-year-old son, who I call Sporty Spice, wanted to go down there to be around the area. And so we were, and the weed smell just about knocked me over. I hate the smell of it. Really, I'm like, please just take a gummy like a civilized person. So it's decriminalized, I understand, but it is not regulated. And here's the thing. A young person was shot and killed here in Evansville from a drug deal gone wrong over freaking weed. It is laced with who knows what coming from who knows where. And so it is time to regulate it. So what's going to happen is, so I already know that you go to Illinois and you show your Indiana driver's license, and there's a certain amount you can buy, like certain grams or whatever. And so those taxes go to Illinois, and then you bring it back here. So yes, it absolutely should be legalized, regulated, and taxed, just like alcohol and everything else, cigarettes. At the last Meet Your Legislators event, Jim Toms said, well, we're talking about cigarette tax. And he goes, I just think a working man should be able to buy a carton of cigarettes and a pound of bologna and a case of beer at the end of his week, and shouldn't be overtaxed by the cigarette tax. Now, it's about a 10-mile trip across the bridge to Kentucky where they don't have tobacco tax like we do. People just go over to Kentucky and get it. Like, it's just lost revenue. And I'm not, I think the cigarette taxes are fine as they are. I don't have any plans to change that, but there's a whole market, and people, like, you can buy Delta and it still has the same effects. So what's the difference? Just freaking regulate it so that people are safe.
Exactly. I feel the same way. It needs to be regulated, because you're right. Things can be laced when you are dealing with somebody who doesn't have to have regulations, and they can put things in them that actually harm your lungs. And so I agree, just on the regulation part and the taxation part, we are leaving money on the table. It's probably billions of dollars.
We should just go ahead and mail checks to Illinois and Ohio. Let's just go ahead and get it over with. Like, let's cut out the middleman.
And I think that people are still so scared that it's like a gateway drug. But here's the thing, is that people that I know using it, whether they realize it or not, they are using it in a medicinal way.
For sure.
Many people that I know that use cannabis use it for pain management. They use it for nausea if they have cancer. They will use it for panic attacks and anxiety. Epilepsy. It has so many good things. We are dumb in Indiana to not legalize it.
Yeah, and I don't know whether the prohibition has stayed this long due to Eli Lilly putting money in politicians' pockets, or if it's because of this sort of religious notion.
Devil's lettuce.
The devil's lettuce, yes. And so I don't know if it's a combination of the two. Some legislators maybe are keeping it out because of Lilly, and some, but if you think about the addictive qualities of things like benzos or opioids, versus the profile, the addictive profile, decades and decades of data on cannabis use now. So the evidence is clear. And, there's no more argument if you actually pay attention to the numbers, which, again, is not getting out to people in rural communities. They're not hearing the facts. And number two, I don't think our lawmakers are really fact people. I am. When I watched the Senate that day, it was like romper room. Nobody was in their seats. Everybody was talking. People were scrolling on their phones. I've seen middle school classrooms better managed. It was embarrassing. I was like, I am astounded at this.
But does it surprise you that the same people who are doing that are the same people who put out the firing squad bill, when, if you look at the numbers, when you're talking about capital punishment in general, it's always cheaper to incarcerate someone for their entire life, not because of the cost of incarcerating them is cheaper. It's just that because when you are put to death, there are mandatory appeals that a person must go through, and that is there to try to ensure that we're not putting an innocent person to death. And after their first trial, they may have had personal representation, but I guarantee after that first trial, there's no money. So they are using taxpayer dollars to do all of these appeals, and they're very costly.
Yeah.
So if we want to save money, we'd not be doing the capital punishment anyway. Maybe in certain circumstances, like I'd be okay if they were like, in extreme certain circumstances, you can get special permission or whatever, but that should be a process that is set out, because so many innocent people are put to death every year and it's costing us money.
Yeah. Additionally, I am consistently troubled by the bills that are written because of one or two or five people, and the focus on that, like the anti-trans athlete bill. It was a policy looking for a problem. And I will just say that in terms of the execution, since 1976, there have been 5 people executed in Indiana on death row. So we need firing squad. Now, here's what I read in the Indiana Capital Chronicle, that because we had gas chambers, the House bill version had gas chambers as well, and until the people, and they buried it in the middle of a bill about boat safety. I'm sorry, no. That one was to give Braun to turn the Indiana National Guard into a paramilitary force that reports to Braun. That was what they buried in the boat safety bill.
So would you be for single issue bills in the future?
Oh my gosh. Yes, these kitchen sink bills are, and this one was just a clear dead up sandwich bill. Clean bills, yes. Lawmakers love to do this, and I understand. With hundreds of bills out there to go through, but this is ridiculous. The SB 1, I'm sorry, it's SEA now, 1, a Senate Enrolled Act from last year, that was just pages and pages of regulations with little things buried in there that harmed people, including taking the caps off of school vouchers. Mm-hmm. So, on the execution part, there was a report that President Trump himself had asked Republican lawmakers to put forth a bill to allow firing squads and gas chambers. As you know, we have the Miami Correctional Facility that they are housing people who have not had a trial, no due process at all. People who have been kidnapped. And so the putting all these things together is incredibly troubling. If we assume best motives, which is hard to do these days, it still is crap when you divide it up. But when you put them all together, it's terrifying. Journalists arrested this morning. You're putting yourself out here, right? And I'm putting myself out here. And I'm not going to lie, like, I've updated my will. because I understand the gravity of what we're under. And the Indiana Republicans, I'm so disappointed in the group of them that are trying to carry these things out, and they're hoping we don't pay attention. And I have to confess, 5 years ago, I didn't really pay a whole lot of attention.
I think that's how a lot of us were. I mean, like, it was 6 years ago. I got involved because I'm a COVID widow. I was widowed at 31.
Wow.
My husband was 37. He was one of the first young deaths in Indiana of COVID. He died on April 6th of 2020. And that is when I got really involved in politics, because COVID was so politicized. So whenever the veil is taken off, the important thing is the veil is taken off.
Yeah.
And we all need to like remember that once that people realize what is actually happening, we should say, yes, you finally get it. Great. Come on, let's join us.
100%. Yeah. And people are waking up all over. And yes, even if they voted for this, and even if up until a week ago they were for this, they can absolutely, it's not too late. One of the problems that we've had in Indiana, and I understand why as a candidate, because oh my God, it is another full-time job, is not having these career politicians, wealthy people, old people challenged, because it's too difficult to both try to raise money, try to do the campaign. Like, I am not taking any corporate money. I would only take money from unions and individual donations. And my opponent has $55,000 cash on hand because he's not been opposed, and a blank check from the gun lobby. I can't beat him that way. That's not, I can't even try. And so I'm going to have to go, door knocking, showing up to things, and taking every opportunity I can to talk to people. And it's truly grassroots. And it shouldn't have to be like that for people who come later. We should have lots of people able to represent us in our state legislature, because it is the closest, besides our county and city government, that's what affects us. What the COVID policies were really state specific, right? I mean, and I'm down here at Kentucky's border watching Andy Beshear just, deal with it like a champ. And I'm like, can we just move over to Henderson? I never thought I'd be like, Kentucky's government is doing a better job than us. But man, Andy Beshear's got a good head on his shoulders. So
yeah. It showed a lot of people's true colors, is what I would say, is what COVID did. But we are running out a little bit low on time. You were talking about your grassroots, so tell people where they can find you, where they can donate to you.
Okay, so cindyforsenate.com, so CINDI for Senate.com, and same on all socials. Right now, conveniently, my Facebook is locked out. And so I don't think I'm going to be able to get it back. So that's one thing to keep in mind. And I didn't post anything weird, I promise. They say it's for security, but it's so secure I can get in it. So anyway, and then there's a place where you can donate on my page. It goes through Act Blue, which is kind of like Venmo for candidates. And by the way, if somebody's like, oh gosh, that's a Democrat thing, the Red Wave, you can donate to Republicans. It's the exact same thing. So $5, $10, it matters. I have sweet people from all over the state that are sending me $5 a month. And I'm incredibly grateful, because each yard sign is $7.50. I'm going to need a lot of those. And I am funding myself as well. I'm putting my own money where my mouth is, what little I have after trying to help my daughter through law school and paying Centerpoint. And so my skin's in the game too, but every little bit helps. And I am incredibly grateful. If you can't donate, I understand these are hard times. If you can spread the word, tell people to check me out. Tell people to, if they've got a platform like you do, to platform me, I'm here for it.
Amazing. Well, I appreciate you coming on. This has been a great conversation. Thank you so much, and I wish you the best of luck.
All right. Thanks, Brianna. Thanks for having me.
Thank you again. And everybody have a great and warm weekend. I'll see you next time.
Thank you. Bye.